Welcome back to the Law of Relevancy. Today we're joined by the president of Hartin Dynamics, Dennis Hartin.
How are you?
Very good, man. Thanks for coming in.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you about employee benefits and understanding. I mean, it is such a challenging world out there right now with all the dynamics within healthcare and attracting and retaining talent. What are some of the common questions you're getting these days from employers?
One, I'll thank you for saying that you're excited to talk because, I don't know anyone. I never thought I'd see the day in my life where people were excited to talk about employee benefits. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Employers are faced with employees, literally making transition on a moment for what seems like small amounts, right? So since COVID, we've got everybody kind of reflecting on what is my life goals, where am I going to be, what am I going to do? Is this where I want to be, and am I in a space that's fulfilling overall? And so I think everyone's questioning kind of their place in reality right now. And with the tensions going on around the world, if it's not, it started out with this pandemic or what we didn't even realize how significant a pandemic it was going to be to, just all of the diversity issues that have come into play. And we deal with riots, and now it's another war that we're, watching on TV, which is it's just this bizarre level of, what's the world coming to and where do I fit into it? I think a lot of employees are trying to figure that out every day, really. It's kind of a daily decision, is it not?
Well, then you picked the right name for your company, Dynamics.
Yeah, it's moving, that's for sure.
So, all right, so let's address one of the most interesting things that's happened in the employee type world is all this remote work.
Yeah.
So how does remote work play into benefits conversations?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because it has changed so dramatically. I worked in an industry for 30 years, really 25 years before I retired from that specific company, and our whole stick was to come in on site, explain benefits to you. We had to be face to face, and it was kind of that belly button to belly button conversation. And I never really dreamed of a world that would be different. And if you fast forward to today, when we all went remote, we found there's a lot of benefits of being able to communicate a whole benefit strategy very consistently to everybody. And if you can't make the Zoom call, it really doesn't matter because we can record it and send it to you. And what I have found is spouses and people that are tied to that benefit plan hear the whole story right from the get-go because they wouldn't normally come in. How many times would someone come and explain a benefit to you, and then you got to go home and try and explain it to your spouse or how it's supposed to work? And if you're not in that space every day, it can be complex. And so the ability to record it and broadcast it to remote employees all over the world, really, and be almost in any space possible. I mean, it's something I know. Anybody who knows me knows I've spent a ton of time in an RV over the last year, and a lot of that was because we got sick and tired of being at home. And I told my wife, I'm like, hey, if we had good Wi-Fi, like I can do this from anywhere.
Right.
And that's really what we did. We traveled all over Florida and spent a couple months in Utah with my grandson or my granddaughter and my son and his new wife. And so it was an amazing opportunity. There's challenges that come with it, but we've certainly enjoyed that over the last year.
Well, speaking of that kind of a lifestyle, I know that REI, so we have a brand new REI location right here in Midtown. REI closed down their corporate offices. They were like, work from wherever you want to. And to me as a marketer, I thought it was really appropriate because that's what their company is all about.
Yeah.
Being outdoors, being from anywhere.
Yep.
And being able to, enjoy what you like.
Well, it's allowed us to find employees in unique spaces and allow them to work remote in a lot of cases. As long as you find somebody who will actually put in the effort. The truth is, a lot of what I'm doing, I'm not a heart surgeon, right? So I need to be at certain places at certain times to be out and to be present and to be helpful. But so much of what we do can be done. The details can be handled via email. The relationship can actually be built in a lot of different ways, but it allows my employees to actually have a better lifestyle. They frequently now, the team that supports me spends a couple of days in the office in a week and 2 or 3 days at home, and they get to choose when they want. So that flexible work schedule is sort of forced us into an environment that I think helps the organization. It's more efficient. We ended up closing our office early in COVID. And the only reason I was going into the office is because it existed. Then during COVID, we couldn't go into the office. It was a shared space at that time as we were scaling up over the last couple of years. And now we're, our day-to-day conversations when we're looking at budgeting and growth, we're adding employees here in the Tampa market, and it's a difficult question to answer. Do we go set up a storefront because ultimately our clients don't come see us. We're either there via virtually or in person, or we go visit with them in their office. So the storefront has not been necessary. We have 5 offices in Kentucky from my parent company that have been there for 100 years. Those historic old buildings, I'm sure our holding company is looking at that going, how much money are we spending here and how much does it really matter to people? A presence in a community matters, but I don't know that that's brick and mortar like it used to be.
Well, speaking of brick and mortar and storefronts and signage and all of those things, that really, a lot of that boils down to access and your marketing plan, right? So you've been in B2B marketing for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you find has been very effective for you or most effective for you when you're trying to establish relationships with new prospects and deliver?
Yeah, I've invested a lot of time with some key relationships, right? We've got some mutual friends that I think have done an amazing job of understanding the basics of my business. And when they hear employers dealing with challenges, luckily it's easy for them to refer me, because you're not going to talk to a lot of employers or employees right now that are thrilled with their healthcare experience, with what they're spending on healthcare, or the amount of money that they're having to invest, and the overall consumer experience. If you think about an REI or an Amazon, and then correlate that to the last time you had to go to the doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
That user experience, I don't think a lot of us would give a 5-star, or thinking, oh, this is going to be, I'm going to get my physical this year. I mean, I'm excited because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to cost, and likely I won't even get a bill that I leave that's anywhere near remotely transparent. So it comes after the fact.
Right. It's not the greatest experience in the world, is it?
It's terrible. It's not Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of what we try and solve for.
And how is healthcare evolving? Like, what are the options that people have out there these days that they haven't had before?
Yeah.
And
so the good news for us, and this was what caused a lot of my transition. So I was in a space for 25 years dealing with, we had 8,000 employers that were offering benefits to their employees. And I just saw a major change in what the affordability was for our products. And what happened was there was so much pressure on health insurance, the employees couldn't afford some of the ancillary things that we were marketing and building a huge business on. And I'd made a lot of success over the 25 years I was with that company. I saw this change, and I started looking at what's happening. Healthcare costs are going up, deductibles are going up, premiums are going through the roof. Employers are trying to find answers for it, and they just weren't readily available. And really what I saw from most of the peer group that I was working with around here in Tampa was the answer to lowering cost was to reduce benefits. And nobody wants that. It's costing me more money, but I'm getting less bang for my buck. And so what I see happening is this major transition. A lot of the big carriers are just saying, yeah, we'll cover whatever you want, but it's going to be built into the price. And I think you're going to see big pressure put on that this year. You're seeing inflation hit a lot of different areas, right? All of us today are talking about gas prices.
Right.
That pressure is happening with employers not being able to find nurses to staff nursing homes. And so you're seeing companies try and answer some of those, but they're answering the cause, but it's costing more money. All of that eventually is going to end up and trickle down into premium increases. And so we have found ways to help the employer take control of that spend and actively manage their plan. For years, you just said, okay, there's 20 plans I can choose from. I'm going to pick the one that fits my budget.
Right.
And you didn't look much under the hood. Employers today, and this is really what's helped Hartin Dynamics grow. Mm-hmm. For 2 years, I preached that you can actually control that cost. I think prior to COVID, nobody really was that concerned about it. It was high, but I wasn't really willing to do anything about it. With COVID, people took a little more time and attention saying, if I really can control the costs and I can improve the plan design, why would I not take this leap, right? So now we've got relatively simple levers that we can pull for an employer that's willing to take a different look at his health plan. And my role, I view, is important because it's going to help you see everything that's available. You're not buying a health plan from me. You're paying me as an advisor to go out and actually source the market. There's 5 major carriers, and that's what most people see. They don't realize there's 5 other options outside of the major traditional carriers that they can look at. Now, I'm not saying they need to go into this really active approach. That may not be the right fit for every employer, but at least know what all my options are. Frequently, because of the incentives with the major carriers, employers are only shown 2 or 3 options, and they're saying, well, this is the best.
When you say incentives, you're talking about the commissions.
Yeah. There's the incentives are wildly misaligned in my business. You think about it. If I paid my CPA a little bit more money because he sent more money to the IRS, I'd probably fire my CPA. But that's exactly how we get paid in the insurance industry more often than not. Dynamics we saw 4 or 5 years ago that typically our clients pay us a fee for service just like they would their CPA or their attorney. So if rates go up, it's not going to bode well
so
for my
you've
position.
uncoupled that relationship of a commission with what you're doing, like an actuary.
Yeah, you pay me per head to help manage your plan. And I'm incentivized to lower your cost and improve the plan, which is what I think everybody thinks their broker's doing for them, but it actually doesn't happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that way.
You think about healthcare, it's like the last massive, engine out there that's still got a lot of smoke and mirrors going on in it. Transparency is almost everywhere except healthcare.
It's too bad because the risk is so high.
It's massive.
I mean, just all around there's risk. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday about ACOs, active care organizations, and it was a physician group, and they have a way of doing a procedure that saves the ACO lots of money. And maybe you can tell us what an ACO is just to help make it in layman's terms for us.
Yeah, the active care organizations have come in, and really it almost goes bigger than that. It's venture capital, right? If I invest in an organization, what do I want for that investment? It's return, right?
Right.
And if you look at even what happened, Obamacare or ACA, right? I don't want to get into a political conversation, but that was designed to help tackle and lower costs. Well, they built something in there that nobody realized, and it's this medical loss ratio. And what it did is it caused there to be an incentive for the insurance companies and some of the facilities to bill whatever and pay whatever. Because as the percentage goes, they're paid on a percentage. And the only way to make it bigger, ironically, we talk about it all the time, is to make the pie bigger, right?
Right.
So that's if I'm paid on a percentage, if I make the pie bigger, everybody wins. But who loses in that's us. The employer and the employees. So you have scenarios where I have people all the time, I'm trying to explain to them, hey, your insurance company does not have an incentive anymore to lower your cost. In fact, they have an incentive to increase your cost.
Right.
And how are they going to cover that? They just pass it along to you in rate increases. You can look at the graph and the increase since 2010. That one piece that was designed to be helpful legislation, it was not done with ill intent. It just had the worst backfire I think it'll come out in history that it was one of the worst things we could have possibly done.
The market always figures out a way.
Yeah.
Right? The market always comes up with a solution. Well, you obviously are an expert in this thing. What it seems like to me is that there's misalignment of incentives. Like, is there a way to get those back in check?
Yeah, I think it starts with having, the right advisor. And there's a handful of us around Florida and around the country. So you'll see them a part of Mitigate Partners, which is about 30 of us that we technically compete, right? In our industry, we compete. But the reality is we work and pool resources and partner together because we all have, collectively a better goal in mind to try and help the consumer. And so that's step one, is find somebody whose incentives are aligned with yours as an employer. I think that's the biggest role. And then secondarily, someone who understands their local market to understand what can we do, right? Because there's things we can control and things that we can mitigate around, but there's a lot of things we can't control. I can't control what happens at the federal level, right? I can vote, but my vote's going to count once. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of incentives in healthcare, in lobbying efforts. If you look at pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of money being thrown into that. There's a lot of legislation out there now for transparency and trying to control some of the pharmacy spend. And the reality of it is it's all intended well, but again, it's just like the medical loss ratio. It was a good intended position that ended up going poorly. We were just up at DC or in Tallahassee a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about a specific bill that's going to, cap the cost for copays for insulin, which sounds great. The problem is nobody was capping the cost of what they bill your insurance company. So you're going to save on your copay, but the insurance premium is eventually going to go up.
And that's going to show up other places.
Yeah. So so there are ways to manage it, and it's by getting transparent processing, transparent PBMs. If there's incentives in the PBMs that they come back to as an employer, we can do that. And you don't actually, a lot of people think you have to be a large employer to do that. I actually present next week in Orlando, part of the Health Rosetta Summit. They're asking me to speak, and the concept is really how to purchase your healthcare like a Fortune 500 company. We've done this successfully it's a $35 person doctors group out of Kentucky that serves in the mental health space and addiction recovery space. And that's an important role. Those are the companies we want to help, like these nonprofits. You'll see if you tie into where Dennis is connected, you're going to see it's a lot of nonprofits. It's a lot of causes. It's teachers, right? We've had some great success over the last couple of years with one of the charter schools in Hillsborough County and saved those teachers $230,000 on their health spend, which is about 30% of what they were spending. And now that goes back into their pocket, right? And they can keep that money and go spend it in other places. Investment in the community, investment in their classroom, investment in whatever they feel like. But it's not going out of state to other big insurance carriers.
Is there any disruptive technology in the space right now? Like telemedicine, I know is catching on.
Yeah, we've used, ironically, we've used a lot of video, right? Micro learning, I think, is a huge component that we've invested in heavily. We've helped develop probably one of the only proactive, or I would call it more a preventative mental health tool in the market called emotional vaccines. We've done that locally in answer to some of the stresses and anxieties.
When you say we, who's we?
So Dr. Mira is a 30-year dually board certified psychiatrist and physician here in the Tampa Bay area. And we tragically lost someone that you'll see if you look up anything around Operation Jack's Village. We lost Jack to suicide at 13, and
oh man!
And I had so many scenarios within a few months that were just tragedies, and I ultimately just went to Dr. Mir and said, "You got to help me. I'm supposed to be an expert, and nobody's talking about how to solve for mental health. Telemedicine during COVID has helped, but you never know who's answering the phone, right? How do you know that this therapist that you're reaching out to is not just trying to pull money out of your insurance company?" And actually trying to provide you the care that you need. And the truth is, it's not too dramatic for me to say that it's a life or death situation, right? So we have lost some people tragically. I've been with employers who have had employees who have threatened to complete suicide on a Zoom call with hundreds of employees on the call at the time.
Oh my heavens.
And you can't imagine what that does when you're trying to build culture. Imagine that person who's just having a really bad day. They don't know where to go for care and for treatment. So I've really leaned in with Dr. Mir to say, you got to help me figure this out. And when you look at the number of therapists that are around, there's just not enough. If all of us that needed therapy, which I contend a lot of us probably need more than we realize, there's not enough people out there. Dr. Mir is, not a spring chicken. I think I can say that publicly. But he's done a great job. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, the challenge in this is that if you don't like Dr. Mira, ask me to name 2 other people that could do exactly what he does, and they just barely exist. So we've worked with USF locally to try and help. We've built these videos. We are utilizing technology. We're using enrollment platforms that are all online, and we spend the time with the employee helping them understand how it works, not explaining how to fill out a form. That's really helped dramatically. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about Jack's Village. I didn't know that you went through that.
Yeah, no, it was our next door neighbor, and his father and I have become very, very close. And I think things get put in our path, and you can call it divine intervention, whatever you want. But I do believe all those things happen for a reason, and so we've just tried to take that and build it into something that can help other people. Jack's mother is working very heavy to communicate and pull in grassroots resources to help the local community so other mothers don't have to go through it. My son's a videographer, and he captured her story because I just tragically didn't want her to have to continue to tell it. So we use video for that. So those kinds of technologies have been very helpful to us getting the message out.
What is it about you, Dennis, where you see something that needs to change and you just do it?
I tend to like the big fight, right? And it's not that I'm adversarial. I'm not. I just feel like if I've been given certain gifts and opportunities, we've been extremely blessed in my household. So if I see a scenario where I think my unique skill set can help bridge, I talk a lot about where 1 and 1 makes 3, right? Where can you and I partner up and our forces together are stronger? Those are the things that I look for in life. And I feel like if it's put in front of me, that I've got some drive, some switch that gets flipped in me that says, hey, this is something that you have to do something about. Now, my wife will tell you that I need to peel back some because I'm probably involved in a few too many things, but they're all aligned. Everything that I do, Autism Shifts, trying to help place people in the workforce, helps the HR community that I serve that are trying to find talented people. Dr. Meir with mental health helps serve the employees that I have, that ultimately, if we don't tackle mental health in a capacity now, we have the tsunami coming that's going to turn into healthcare expenses that I won't be able to, I won't be able to solve for as easily as we could today, being on the front end of it.
We don't even know how the pandemic and everything everybody went through the last couple of years is impacted us yet, really. I mean, thank goodness that at least a lot of the stigma is gone. It's 20 years ago, somebody that, there was a lot of resistance for people seeking out some help, mental, especially like dudes, right? We had to be tough guys, and there's a lot of stigma there, but thank goodness now it's, everybody's considering it as an option. I mean, it's almost cool nowadays as a teenager to have a therapist.
I think the stigma is, there's definitely better awareness. There are areas where I think Dr. Meir would actually say, hey, the stigma hasn't changed, and it's from his level, he sees it in different capacities. I think it's generational. I think my generation is at least more open to thinking about it. But it's still, the stigma still exists higher than you would think. There are parents that don't want their child labeled for obvious reasons, and a lot of these things start to exhibit at a much younger age. In fact, NAMI says that symptoms start to surface, and it takes 10 years frequently before the average person gets treatment. And I've seen some of that in a real world scenario. And so while the stigma is reduced, that awareness is coming up, but there's just not enough resources and therapists out there to treat it. And so we're going to have to use technology. We're going to have to lean on people like Dr. Meir and I've captured so many of his stories within these emotional vaccines that we've been able to utilize for our clients. It's amazing. But he said point blank early on, he said the emotional impact of COVID will harm way more people than the physical impact ever will.
No doubt about it.
I don't think we have. He says there's a tsunami coming, and I tend to believe him. I'm not looking for it, but I see it every day.
So I wish Dr. Meir was here,
Yeah.
But maybe you can share some of your experiences and things that you've already seen. As employers, especially like small and medium-sized businesses where we know everybody that we work with, right? We know about their families, we know what they like to do, what their hobbies are, whatever. Like we care about these people. I mean, one of the most proud things that I have about owning this business is just supporting these families. Just being able to provide benefits, salaries, whatever, to make sure that people can do life, and not sweat it. Like we max out our benefits as much as we can, so that way that whole variable is removed from people's lives, and it's one of the things we try to do. But what are some things that we can do as employers to just like, hey, something's off, like I might need to go have a conversation with somebody or whatever? What are things we can look out for?
Well, I think the first thing you have to understand is that employees have an automatic instinct that they assume that if they share something or they overshare, it could weigh into their job security, right? That's a natural instinct. And so providing proactive tools and resources and communicating them when there's not a challenge, right? So, because if you think about it, if you had someone who has a big challenge and all of a sudden you react to it, it comes off as not as genuine. Does that make sense?
Right.
So making sure that, hey, do we have an EAP that's effective, right? Those have been around a long time. Employees still are reluctant.
What's the EAP?
Employee Assistance Program. So it's kind of a crisis line, if you will. And they exist everywhere, but their utilization is less than 2%, and it's probably bumped a little with COVID, but not much.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you about, I guess it's 13 years ago now. Like I was going through, had a job, and I was going through a divorce. And I went to the HR person, and they were like, here, call this number. Like, if you need any help, call this 800 number, and you can speak directly with a therapist. And thank goodness for that.
Well, and it's anonymous, and it's designed to be, 3 to 6 visits. It's kind of the triage of it, right? But employers don't realize that anything you can do on the front end, right? If you start looking for proactive tools, there's very few in the market, but ironically, we have a couple here. And so that's the step one, I think. Step 2 is providing the right resources. And then step 3 is really looking at your health plan and saying, if someone had to go beyond those 6 treatments, what could we do?
Right.
What are the solutions? And so being very proactive on that. Sometimes it means adjusting your plan design and your health care. Sometimes it just means being more visible and marketing some of your own benefit strategy to your own people. In reality, benefits are designed to help attract and retain talent, but if your employees don't understand them, which becomes a marketing component. I just explained that to an employer today. I'm like, your job, step one is to hire the right person. And then secondarily, my job is to take whatever your budget is, fit it to the best plans possible or the best program possible. Then I market it to your people so they see the value in it.
Yeah.
Because think about this, Cords. This is the part that I think that when you wrap your head around it is significant as an owner. When your employees have a bad experience in healthcare, right? They're already nervous about getting a shot. They don't really know what's going to happen. The billing, the way it comes out, like I alluded to earlier, employees don't complain about the doctor, the facility, the insurance broker that sold it. They don't complain. They used to complain maybe about Obamacare if they were politically motivated, right? They would point the finger at all these different directions, but frequently the number one person they would blame is the leadership, saying my employer doesn't care enough about me to invest in a healthcare plan that I have some transparency, that I can control my costs, that I can afford to get my family treated. And what happens is, and this I saw in my old career, one of our old roles was to say, hey, raise your deductible, backfill it with these voluntary products.
This is what you were trained to do.
Yeah, that was the goal. And what happened is employees, some of the younger generation especially, came in and said, well, I'm not worried about it. I don't take it. Or if I do take it, I got to spend $5,000 before it even pays anything. Why would I spend my money on that? So they do nothing, and then treatments get delayed. Mm-hmm. And when treatments get delayed, I don't know about you, but cancer hasn't solved itself, right?
I think we all know people where that's a big problem.
Just delayed care is expensive, and it ends up showing up in an urgent situation or emergent situation.
Or tragic situation.
Yeah, or tragic. Yeah, they see no hope, which ends in really bad places. And that has an impact that's ripples across generations, across multiple families. I mean, we've had some serious tragedy that we've seen in our life, and I can look now 10 years later and see what the fallout was of just one simple decision.
What are some other trends you're seeing in just the world of employing employees? Where do you think it's headed?
I think we have to listen more and understand what the employees really want. I'll give you an example around retirement, right? I think a lot of the next generation is more concerned about paying off student loans than they are investing in their 401ks.
That's a good point.
So just understanding, what do my employees need, right? And you have two employees that are maybe 50 years old versus the two employees that are 20 years old. Those needs are different, but those employees are valuable on both fronts, right? So just paying attention to the broad, diverse, approach that you have as an employer. And then bringing in, I do think the one of the coolest things I see is there's a lot of different voices at the table now. I don't like it when a couple of smaller voices are loud and we pander completely to one specific arena without looking at everybody. But ultimately, we want to bring in all of the talent, all of the ideas possible, so we can make the best possible decision for our businesses.
I've never even thought about that. Is there a solution that employers are using to help their employees take care of their student loans? Like, is there any kind of a benefit?
Yeah, there are benefits out there that you can fund for the employees in a couple of areas. And one, the money can either go towards student loans or it could go into retirement. And in two different demographics.
But that's what we typically do. We do 401k matching.
Yep.
So you're saying that as an employer, I can actually do pre-tax or tax deferred?
You can fund money that they can plug into, paying off student loans. Now, pre-tax would depend on how it's set up, but
sure.
But there's a lot of great strategies out there. Good news is there's all of these tools that if we take a minute and look at it and we're proactive, I think if there's anything employers really have to do is work on it farther ahead. There's one of the techniques in the healthcare side or the benefits side that if I give you your renewal 60 days out, it takes us a month to actually look at it and talk about what should we do. And then we're 2 weeks from open enrollment. We don't have time to make meaningful change. Most of the clients that we brought on board, I picked them up literally immediately following their open enrollment experience, and they were saying, I'm never going to go through that again.
Yeah.
And and that's what they want, something different. So we're way ahead of, open enrollment to try and make decisions. The industry pushes that agenda, and I think employers have fallen into that trap. And so we never have as much time as we want to make those decisions, but being proactive and looking. So way ahead of open enrollment for next year, looking at surveys for the employees, saying, what do you care about, right? My best employers we have big built surveys that we can simply send it out in a minute. They can get answers and feedback in real time. And then we can start to make those adjustments that tweak for that employer, because their concerns today might be different than they were 2 years ago. That's pretty significant, I would say. and then where they're at even a year from now, we don't know what the world's going to look like a year from now. I wish I had a crystal ball.
Hopefully it's better.
Yeah, you got to think sometimes, knock on wood, you don't want to say that it can't get worse because, there's a new tragedy.
I don't even want to talk about what that might even look like.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
So one of the things I do as an employer is obviously I'm getting calls all the time from people wanting to talk to me about my benefits,
Sure.
For the staff. And nowadays what I've done is, typically I reevaluate like every other year.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'll say, call me back in 2 years, call me back in a year and a half, call me, whatever. So that way I can at least start shopping 6 months before it's crunch time. What are some other things? I don't know if that's smart or not, but that's what I do.
Sure.
What's some advice that you would give to employers to handle that process? What's the smartest way to do it? Like, for example, we said, okay, we're going to work with these people that we know. Some of them were, like our existing provider, someone that we knew in the community. And we said, okay, here's 3 or 4 people. We're going to go through this process all at once, kind of like RFP style.
Yep.
And then let's see what they all come back with.
Yeah, I think interviewing your advisor is a good step, right? What are they about? Where are their incentives? I can tell you that when I worked for one major carrier, my incentive was to sell that carrier, right? So if you think about that without naming names, that's my motivation. So you have to step back and say, what is the motivation and what are the incentives around it? Yeah. I've seen too much. It's great that we're in an environment where Tampa is just like exploding new technologies, new innovation. Entrepreneurs are everywhere here, which is phenomenal, and I love that stuff. That's one of my passions that I thrive on, just new ideas and how to look at things in a new way. But you also have to look at if their incentives are completely backed by venture capital dollars. I guarantee you somebody's saying, where's this return?
Where's the margin?
Yeah. So it's, and I can say that a lot of the work that I do is not necessarily it's not the easiest work, and it's not necessarily what I would consider the one that would be the most profitable. It's most profitable for me to take every client I have and put them all with one carrier. But if you can look at someone who's saying, "Hey,
short term,"
it is short term.
Long term, that's not the right.
That's
move.
Right, and but a lot of people are in our industry are there. There's a lot of movement and a lot of transition, and there's very few. I had someone reach out to me recently that said, "Dennis, you're one of the few local independent firms that's still driving your message to the client, and it's not coming from venture capital money." I still answer to my partners, but the reality is my partners I've known, they've been in the business for 100 years. I knew what they were about because I worked with them for 25 years. We wanted to duplicate that here in a proper way. So if you're an employer and you're looking at your advisor and you're saying they were just bought out, they're in some, they're being funded.
Right. Try to understand their incentives.
That's right. Because I've got friends that do what I do that can't promote the products that we can promote. And it puts me in a unique advantage. That wasn't done haphazardly. Listen, I wasn't looking for the more difficult path when I started Hartin Dynamics. Right. I was looking to do the things the right way because I felt like that's what you have to do, right? And you're blessed for that. And then secondarily, I was looking for a way to step into a market and be innovative and do things differently. Because if you hear the same story from me, the reality is if you're under 50 employees, you're in a community-rated plan, there's 100 agents that can go pull the same quotes. We all get the same numbers. Right. You're really not hiring the product, you're hiring the advisor. And so you need an advisor that's going to look at that and be able to be bold enough to say, there's another thing you can do over here. Let's see if this might fit. Are you willing to take this jump or make a change or look at it differently? Some employers can. A lot of my clients say, I want to do that, but I can't do that this year. Will you help me go down the path in the right way? And that's really what I do.
Well, Dennis, thanks for coming in and talking to us about these strategies. You're clearly a leader in the field, and we would like to follow you. Where can our audience follow you, follow your thought leadership, catch you at a conference?
Yeah, I'm in a lot of things. So I would say social media wise, I probably get out on LinkedIn more than anything else. I think since COVID, I've tried to curtail some of that, but Dennis Hartin on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and we do get some information out there. I'm heavily involved around some of the conferences around Tampa Bay. So HR Tampa will be doing our big event in October. I'm behind the scenes on a lot of those things, but I'm pretty easy to access. If somebody wants to just have some dialogue about what if, then just reach out. I love having conversations and building relationships with people that that we can find those opportunities where 1 and 1 make 3, right? Just like with you guys, if I can help you grow, if this attracts some of my crowd to what you guys are doing, then I love that opportunity. So, and I'm shocked all the time at how those connections happen. I never know, and sometimes I don't even think I could plan it on my best day. So,
well, I agree with you with your strategy. I mean, it's really about building trust and credibility with your, everyone in your sphere, in your whole ecosystem, right? And if you do that, you've got a job for life. You'll never go hungry, right? And you'll get a lot of satisfaction out of providing value to people.
I work really hard to be an expert and maintain that expert status, with internal credibility and with the people that I'm working with. So we appreciate you helping us get the message out. I've told a lot of friends, I think what we do is incredibly valuable, but the uphill battle to get that word out to the right people as an entrepreneur is challenging. So good news is hard work does pay off still. I can prove that.
Well, good. Well, thank you for coming in on this episode of the Law of Relevancy. And you can find the Law of Relevancy episodes anywhere where podcasts are found and on our website, lawofrelevancy.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.